Well, for me, I had a strong support cast.
Yeah.
You know, as I stated earlier, I had two older brothers who had went off. One was in the military, one was in college.
Yeah.
But one of the things they continue to do is to pour in me the importance of staying focused and making sure that you have clear goals and expectations.
Yeah.
I had a strong grandmother. I mean, you know, you hear stories all the time about families where the strength of any family is that grandmother, right? And my grandmother, she poured so much into me about just life and just really committing to a purpose. And for me, it took me a while to understand what my purpose was. But now I sit here today clear as day and know that my purpose is to help other people.
Today we have a special guest on our show. We are lucky to have him in our studio, Mr. Moore. He is the director of Parks and Recreation. So we're going to get into his journey and let you know if you're trying to get to the top of the organization, he's going to let you know how he did it so that you can do it too. So before we get into the interview, we're on our way to 100,000 subscribers. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, and drop a like. And if you feel like it, hit us with a comment so that we can understand what you are doing with our content, what you want us to give you, and just let us know that you like the content. So we're going to get right into it. So first, about to be Dr. Moore. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to having this conversation and really talking about what leadership means to me and how I got to where I am now today.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself. So, just tell us, right, what was tiny Reggie Moore like? Like, what was it? Where did you grow up? Did you have a silver spoon in your mouth? How did you start? Right? Because most of our listeners are all in a different place, right? And some have more resources than others. But we bring people on the show that truly, if you will, are from all parts of life, right? And we want to tell our folks that no matter where you come from, it's possible. So tell us where you came from.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So kind of talking about my journey, it started I guess in the early 70s, I was born to Freddie and Wayman Moore. I grew up in a small town in Georgia called Dublin, Georgia.
Yep.
Population at that point in time probably was around 10, 15,000. But it was a really small, tight-knit community. And, as a kid growing up in Dublin, there was not a whole lot to do.
Yeah.
So our options was football, basketball, baseball, just the athletic opportunities.
Yeah.
And so 9 years old, I was introduced to Parks and Recreation, where I played my first sport, which was tackle football. And it was an opportunity for me to learn a sport that I loved. And, the benefit back in those days is the coaches that really taught you what the sport meant, but also they just taught you life skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just, right from wrong. It just kind of helped support what your parents was teaching you on a daily basis. Well, in my journey, I played sports up through high school, but that journey did not go without some struggles and challenges. I lost my mom when I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
I had two older brothers who was raised by our grandparents. And, they taught us the difference between right and wrong, but they taught us always to work hard.
Yeah.
They taught us the importance of education. And one of the things they always say, regardless of what people say about you, one of the things they can never take from you, your knowledge, your education, your degrees. So never think that anything in life is going to be easy. Find any opportunity that you can to grow and develop your skills. But always respect, regardless of who it is. Respect and treat everybody the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
Treat people the way that you would want them to treat you. So grew up in a small town, graduated from Dublin, high school. I went to college at Georgia College. At that point in time, it was called Georgia College. The funny story is I got my undergrad degrees and I have a biology degree with a minor in chemistry.
Yeah.
And many times people ask me, say, how in the world did someone with a biology degree with a minor in chemistry end up in government? And everybody has their different stories, but I decided going to my senior year in college, I was no longer interested in going to med school.
Yeah.
And my goal was, what was that alternative for me? And I went and finished my degree and had an opportunity to student teach and teach there for about a year, and I realized that it really wasn't education of working in the school system, but I really wanted to find something I could do to impact and change lives.
Absolutely.
And not only kids, but communities.
Yeah.
And so I had an opportunity to go and work for Macon Bibb County Parks and Recreation Department, where I started as their athletic coordinator. And the rest is history. You know.
Man, that's a huge story. I mean, perseverance, right? There's a lot of folks that, have a tragedy in your life, like losing a mother or a parent or a sibling or whomever, right? In your case, a parent, and they struggle to focus, especially in your teenage years, to get back on track. But you showed a level of resilience, right? To keep focused and to move on. Talk about how that was in your life and how you were able to do that, because a lot of people struggle to stay focused when they, especially at a younger age, right, to deal with something like that. How did you stay focused? Because a lot of our listeners, right, things happen and they lose focus, and it takes time for them to gain it to keep going. How were you able to do that?
Well, for me, I had a strong support cast.
Yeah.
As I stated earlier, I had two older brothers who had went off. One was in the military, one was in college.
Yeah.
But one of the things they continue to do is to pour in me the importance of staying focused and making sure that you have clear goals and expectations.
Yeah.
I had a strong grandmother. I mean, you hear stories all the time about families where the strength of any family is that grandmother, right? And my grandmother, she poured so much into me about just life and just really committing to a purpose. And for me, it took me a while to understand what my purpose was. But now I sit here today clear as day and know that my purpose is to help other people.
Yeah.
And that's the role that I serve now as you stated earlier, as the director of Baltimore City Rec and Park. So what I would tell anyone that's out there that's struggling, that feels like the world is against them, that they feel like they continue to run into every brick wall possible, is that to stay focused, because every obstacle, every challenge that you face is only going to make you stronger.
Yeah.
And so you can't let doubt. You got to have confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you don't believe in yourself, then who's going to believe in you?
Absolutely.
So, that's another thing I would just strongly encourage, is that believe in who you are. Believe that there's a purpose in your life. Understand what your purpose, and then just go out and excel and just knock it out the box, and don't worry about what anyone say or anybody. People are they can always tear you down, or people are out there that will say negative things to hurt you.
Yeah.
That's not who you are. You just got to be strength. You got to believe in yourself. You got to dig deep, but you got to have confidence.
Yeah, man. That's a story that, we talk about on this channel a lot, and that's perseverance, right? That's pushing through. That's committing to something, and no matter what goes on, staying focused on the goal that you have. And it sounds like you stay focused. So you had that happen to you, and then you're now in high school, right? The toughest years for anybody, because your mind going through changes, your body going through changes, a lot going on. So talk about then now transition to high school, you playing sports. Were you 3-star, 4-star, 5-star Georgia athlete?
I was a participant in the program. I wasn't labeled as a star, No, I participated. I played. I didn't get a college scholarship to play basketball or football or anything like that. I did run cross country in college, but in high school, it's like seeing like that time is a blur. It goes so fast for you. But some of the friends and relationships that you create there in high school, they last with you forever. But it's one of those things where in our high school we had great teachers that poured everything into you. I say back in those days, I think back in the day, how if you got in trouble in the community, you may get a strong conversation by one of the community people, but also they're gonna call your parents. By the time you get home, you're gonna have another conversation. And I think sometimes that element is lost. That old saying, it takes a village to raise a child.
Correct.
I really believe it takes a village to raise a child. And for me, growing up in a small town like Dublin, having the opportunity to go to school at Dublin High School, which I have a lot of strong pride to this day. I still believe in the Fighting Irish and the academics that was instilled in me from 9th grade all the way through high school. So I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for the academics and what that foundation that was created there in that school system, from elementary school, middle school, and into high school.
So now you're in high school. Now, one of the things about it is you hear it's something that, they talk about as STEM learning. You talking about biology, chemistry. Like, you're the only brother I know that took both of them. One was enough, right? Let alone tackling two science, programs in chemistry and biology. How did you get into thinking about that? You're young, you're in Georgia, you're in a small town, probably a small high school, but it sounds like you're thinking big. Right? To be able to, I'm going to college, I'm doing biology, I'm doing chemistry. Where did that come from? Understand that there's not a lot of kids doing that work.
Well, early on, my grandma says she instilled in me that I was going to be the first doctor in my family.
Yeah.
And she really harped that a lot. A lot of my family also was saying, hey, you're so smart, you're going to be, the first doctor in the family. And I think, sometimes when you hear that, you think that maybe that's my goal.
Yeah.
And that becomes your thoughts, your patterns, and what you're doing in life. And so you start focusing on, like, okay, got to make good grades in high school. Got to excel in those math classes. Got to excel in those science classes, because this will become your life.
Absolutely.
And at some point in time, it was the light bulb went off, and my desire was I didn't want to be a doctor. But at that point in time, you were so far advanced in your education, that you can turn and pivot and change courses. But that's, I think, was my focus, of why I even was thinking about, going to med school and those things, because that's something that was kind of instilled in me at an early age, that you was going to be a doctor in the family. And as a kid growing up, you want to make sure that always that you make sure that you please everyone, and you don't want to disappoint anyone. But I do remember at some point in time, going into my senior year in college, having that conversation with my grandmother. And like I said, she was that rock for me. And she flat told me that was never her intention. She just, she always knew I would be successful in life, and she wanted me to do what made me happy. She was always going to support me from my doctor or whatever I am. So even though sometimes impressions of what you think may not be necessarily what that person have for you, all they want to instill in you is they want you to have clear goals. They want you to stay out of trouble. They just want you to live a positive life, because, she did. So that's kind of how all that transpired, and me, getting this bachelor's degree with a minor in chemistry, and I haven't been in a lab since I graduated from college.
And that's a powerful story, right? Because for many kids, right, you hear a parent or some loved one saying, I want you to be a doctor. I want you to be a lawyer. I want you to be a police officer. I want you to be a teacher. I want you to be an accountant. Or I want you to be whatever that may be in life, and kind of almost push you in it, right? And even for me, I was an engineer until my senior year, and said I hated it, right? And then I transitioned to a business student, right? But it was very hard to make that decision, because I felt like I was letting people down, right? I got my parents saying, man, I'm proud of my boy. He about to be an engineer, first engineer in the family, right? And then, a year later, he's like, my boy didn't change majors, right? He didn't let me down and spend all the money, right? So, how was that transition for you when you really had to say, you know what, this is not for me, and I want to do with my life what makes me happy? How was that transition in that conversation?
Well, I think it was, one, you was a little nervous.
Yeah.
Right? Because like I said, my grandmother's my everything.
Yeah.
Right. And deep down, it's like, oh man, you're gonna let her down. She's gonna be upset with you, disappointed you. But one thing they instilled in us is to be able to be open and communicate. Regardless of what the situation is, communicate, but always be respectful. And I just made a decision that this was not my desire. And I didn't want to continue down this path and do something that long term I would not be interested in continuing. So it was having the conversation. And like I said, her whole thing was, I was just instilling in you to be the best that you can possibly be. If you're a doctor or not, you're still my grandchild. I'm still going to love you the same. But I want you to be happy. You got to find a career path in life for you that you're going to be able to stick with. And you should not be in something if you feel like you're having to do it for someone else. Never do anything for someone else. You got to do it for yourself. And so it was a huge relief for me, but at the same time, you were so far advanced and so far along in your degree, you had to look and see, was this college degree going to work for me, or how do I utilize this college degree? And that's why I went into education because I always loved sports, you know, and loved to coach. But I realized that, you know, your heart got to be in it to teach. And my heart was in, yes, I want to help young people, but that was not the calling that I felt was best for me. So after a year, I realized this was not for me. And I started looking at other options, and that's how I landed up in the world of parks and recreation.
Yeah, so before we get to that recreation, let's talk about this, right? You're in college, you know, you're doing, you know, biology, you know, there's always ups and downs of college, right? First year is always that struggle year. Second year, you're getting your footing. Third, fourth year, you're just trying to get the heck out of there. So tell us what kind of student you were. Did you go to the frat parties? What? Did you study, get all A's? Were you a hybrid? You know, what tell us your college experience, right? Because you always hear extremes. The kid just always focused on academics, or the kid is just out there wilding out and flunking out of school. But what was your experience going through college?
Well, as I stated, I went to a college called Georgia College.
How big is it?
It's in Millersville, Georgia. It has probably about 6,000 students maybe when I was there. But Georgia College was a suitcase college, right? It was in the center of the state. So most weekends it used to be like a ghost town. You know, people would go home. So the parties was on Thursday night. You know, yes, I did attend many parties. Eventually, I became a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. So I was in the Greek life. But I was a student that was focused, but not fully focused at times. You know, so I guess you would say I was a hybrid student. But while in college, I was able to do serve in so many different capacities from a leadership standpoint. For 3 years, I was a student coordinator, which the student coordinator at Georgia College was responsible for. We called it NOVA, but it was our new orientation program.
So you walked the new kids around campus?
New kids around the campus. But I was the coordinator, so I used to have to help coordinate the program and what we was going to do for each setting. The staff, you know, the other college students, we would kind of put together what our skits was going to be like. Because, you know, we had to give parents those different scenarios. Also, I was in student government there. So beyond the Greek life, beyond partying, beyond the academics, I was also a leader on that campus. And so I will say I did a little bit of everything, and eventually, for a couple of years, I also ran cross country. You know, to kind of help cover some of my costs for college. But it was some really good experiences, man. I truly enjoyed my college days, and you know, it's funny, you know, college days and how swiftly they pass. You know, but I wouldn't take or replace any of those days and opportunities and the additional foundation that I was able to receive there at Georgia College, which is now Georgia College and State University.
That's amazing, right? So you got the whole experience of college, and that's I always tell, even for my kids, make sure you work hard, but make sure you enjoy that experience, because you only get it once, right? Where you're almost kind of free to just discover who you are. So I'm glad that you are able to share that with the audience. So you graduate, you teach, you say, this ain't for me, right? And then you get in recreation. But it sounds like you're getting in recreation with a foundation from a leadership standpoint. I'm on campus leading programs. I'm not just a student. I'm participating and I'm leading. You just, you know, you spoke about that. So talk about now I'm getting to rec. What was your first job? How much did you make, right? And how did you do? And then what made you begin to start considering jumping up, right, moving up?
You know, one other thing I want to share quickly about college, too, is I met the love of my life in college, too. So my wife that I've been with now for almost 25 years, we met in college, too. So I can't leave that out.
So whoa. So we got to back that up there. We can't just, you know, swoop through that quick, right? So let's talk about that, because it's interesting. We got a lot of comment. Me and you met our wives in college, right? So let's talk about it, right? You're in college, you know, you meet your girlfriend at that time, eventually become your wife. You know, how did that develop? How did that, you know, go? And, you know, just, you know, talk about that commitment. You know, 25 years is a commitment. You don't hear people talk about that commitment. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, I did meet my wife in college. And, you know, it was my senior year in college. I saw her on campus, and I was like, wow, that's a pretty nice looking young lady there. And, eventually, we crossed paths. We actually was at a step show, and she ended up going to the step show, and we kind of met there, talked, and that, the rest is history. But she's an amazing woman. She's an educator doing phenomenal things in her field.
Yeah.
And what I love about what was common in both of us is that we have a common goal of how we can continue to help and enrich not only our kids that we have personally, but how we touch the lives of kids in the communities that we work in.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's unique that you have people that have similar goals, common goals, and how we can continue to enrich and embrace, kids. So amazing woman, amazing college days, definitely met love of my life. And, over those 25 years, just like anything, I mean, I tell people all the time, marriage is what you put into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And marriage is a full-time job.
Yeah.
And you're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, but it still goes back to the days I spoke to you earlier about my grandmother and the focus that she had, and she instilled in me about being grounded and staying focused.
Yeah.
And so you have to be grounded, and you have to have two individuals that have, that common understanding for each other. So I'm thankful, I'm blessed, and she's a main reason that I'm sitting here in Baltimore, Maryland today, because 7 years ago that opportunity was presented, and every man, you can have an idea you want to do something, but if you don't have that backing to say, hey, let's go do this, let's change our lives, from an established situation. So
because she had to commit to that transition, right? And we're gonna get into that commitment, right? And when you're on your career path and journey, one never thinks the level of commitment, not only that you have to have, but the people around you have to have, right? It's a level of commitment. And so let's talk about it. First job. Mm-hmm. I know when I was in recreation, I was a rec aide handing out free lunches at lunchtime and rolling out basketballs at the gym, right? As a rec aide at 16, how did you start your recreation journey?
So the director at that time in making video content, his name was Michael Anthony.
Okay.
And it's a funny story. I applied for this athletic coordinator job.
Yeah.
And I was really excited because, like I said, in college I did, a lot of activities. Including helping with intramurals and those things. So sports. Again, I think this is my way of I can really reach and help communities by going in this opportunity. And so I applied for the job in summer of '97, and didn't quite hear anything. Right.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm at a crossroad in my life. Maybe it's time to, leave the great state of Georgia and move somewhere. And I ended up moving to Charlotte. And when I moved to Charlotte, like I said, I did not hear anything about this job. And just so happened, one weekend I was there visiting, and I ran into an individual that worked in the rec department. And they said, hey, man, this Mike Anthony guy's been trying to get in touch with you. He's been calling around and trying to get in touch with you. I was like, oh, really? So since I was in town, I picked up the phone and gave him a call. He was like, hey. He was like, man, where you been? We finally got around to interviewing for this job now. This is like September, October.
Yeah.
And so I interviewed for the job, and they ended up offering me the job. But I was at a crossroad. I'm like, you know how we are as young people, like, man, I'm doing some good things in Charlotte right now. I don't think I want to move back to Macon. So the initial decision is I declined the job. Yeah. Went on back to Charlotte, and it was like a couple months later, I felt like maybe that was my purpose, my calling. So I ended up, coming home for Christmas, but I ended up calling him before I came home for Christmas. And this was, again, December 1997. And I said, hey, do you still have that opportunity? Yeah. He says, well, we don't have that opportunity, but we have now created two of what we call an athletic coordinator. So, yeah, we have another position similar to what you originally interviewed for. And he told me to contact, the city's HR department, see if it was still possible, eligible for me to interview. And I ended up interviewing. And I end up taking that job, and at that time, that job paid like $24,000 a year.
That's what, $12, $10, $12 an hour,
But I was happy,
and
that's when I started realizing that my calling was doing something in the public sector. Yeah. And so started out, that was my first job. I was the athletic coordinator. I did that for about 4 years, and there was an opportunity to move from there. But that's how I got into recreation.
So it was interesting. So you were able to merge your passion of working with youngsters, being around sports, right? At that, when you're a coordinator, you got a hybrid, right? You're in the office, but you're out there on the playing fields, right? And so it sounds to me that you kind of found that perfect mix of, right, I'm happy doing what I'm doing, even though, right, you're making 24,000, and I'm certain that you want to make a little bit more than that, but you found first what you enjoy. So work wasn't work, right? And so I always tell our audience, right, if you do what you love, the money will follow.
Right.
Right? So you started doing what you loved, right? Passionate about, and then let's talk about the next level, because the next level that he's going through is going to show how the money follows. So talk about, I'm 4 years, I'm an athletic coordinator, then I'm transitioning to what?
So my next job was interviewed for the special operations manager position. First leadership job, right?
Yep.
In that job, that role was you oversaw athletics, seniors, therapeutics. So basically, you had all the specialty areas outside of rec center operations and those things. And it was at that point in time also when I realized that if I'm gonna stay in this, I need to continue my education. So I went back to my alma mater, Georgia College, and that now, like I said, it had changed its name to Georgia College State University. And I was able to obtain my master's in public administration.
All right.
So went back, got my master's degree. I was selected to be the special operations manager, really going down my journey, doing some amazing things and really trying to help continue to grow and shape that agency at that point in time. And I had an opportunity for my internship, for my master's, I had an opportunity to do it under the city administrator at that time, a gentleman by the name of Melvin Walger. I mean, an amazing leader. He poured so much into me. Just about how to be a leader. You know, about the roles of leaders and leadership and the respect. And one of the things he shared is that regardless of how high you go, never ever lose focus or feel that you're higher than anyone. Treat everybody the same. From the person that may be the custodial to the person that's your senior manager. Being able to communicate with every person at every level. And that is important in leadership. Because sometimes as leaders, as people elevate, they forget where they came from. And they forget those times, or maybe a manager or leader that they had that maybe they didn't like. The way that they treated them. So I strongly encourage people when it comes to growing in your leadership role that you remember the good and the bad. What was the great leaders? What was the bad leaders?
Absolutely.
And like I said, Melvin Walger was amazing. And I used to go and sit in his office and doing my internship, and it was almost like I was in a lecture. You know, he would pull out his whiteboard and I have a book to this day that he gave me, and it was The Introduction of Public Managers. And it was just really this little small brown book, but it really had so much in it. One of my tasks while being the special operations manager was to do a functional chart of our park maintenance division. And understanding the roles of each and every one of those positions, and also collecting data and developing data around our acreage. Which helped later on. I can talk about how we was able to take that information and formulate to create new teams to develop new strategies or how it could be more efficient in their work. But it was those kind of strategies, because before meeting him and going through this, I never really heard about a functional org chart, right? You hear about org charts, but then you say functional org chart. What is that? So continue to work in that role as special operations manager and really excelled in it and really grew those different divisions.
Absolutely.
You know, but regardless of whatever the case may be, I never ever forgot the level of respect for everyone, regardless of who it is. Because man, if you respect people, you can get so much more done. Relationships. You know, and so after serving that capacity, another opportunity was presented for me.
Right, but before you go there, you get there, let's talk about your manager job. So you went from $24,000 a year. 4 years later, you got promoted. How much were you making in that manager role?
At that point in time, it's been a while, but I think that I got bumped up somewhere around 40, I think was the number at that point in time.
So listen to that, right? People say, you know, how you turn your passion, right, into more dollars, right? Passionate about athletic coordinator. I do some great work. And now I went from a $24,000 a year job to a $40,000 a year job, right? That's a $16,000 jump. And so you turned that passion into, you know, more dollars, right? And so you did great there. And right? But the other piece that you're mentioning and that's critical for everyone's growth, is mentorship.
Yeah.
Having people that can help show you the way, having people that's already been there, right, tell you what that path is to get there. And so, whether you knew you were doing that or not, right, you were getting the proper mentorship. And so that helped you elevate even further. So let's talk about, I did the operations manager for a few years. Then what happened next?
Well, also during that time, Macon elected C. Jack Ellis, who was the first African American mayor in Macon, Georgia, and Mayor Ellis decided to promote my rec director at that time, who was again Michael Anthony, who gave me my first job and also gave me my first promotion.
Yeah.
Well, when he was put in the role as the city administrator, he went to the mayor and said that if he was going to serve in this capacity, that he would like to bring someone to serve as a senior administrative officer. And so Mayor Ellis told him, sure. And so I had an opportunity, Again, it was a crossroad for me, and I remember talking to someone else who was another mentor in my career, Larry Fortson, who, when I was a special operations manager, he was the assistant director.
Yeah.
And I remember when he got the call, because at that point in time he was serving as an interim director for the rec department. And I'm like, man, this is a possibility. I might can move into the interim assistant director role possibly, right?
Yeah.
Because we had 3 managers, it was gonna probably be one of the 3 of us, and I thought I had a good shot.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this is what I want to be. I don't want to go and be a senior administrative officer, right? But being the person that he is, we rolled, and he asked me what was my reservation. He thought highly of me. He says, I really see you definitely running a department at some point in time, but this is a greater opportunity for you.
Yeah.
At a young age, I think I was about 35, 36 at this point in time, right? Yeah. And he was like, you got to do what's best for you, but I think this is a great opportunity. And so, that conversation, and, I decided to take this leap.
Yeah.
So I was appointed the senior administrative officer.
Yep.
Served in that capacity a little over 2 years.
Yep.
Before Mayor Ellis was term limited.
Absolutely.
But in that role, I learned so much, because now I was not so much focused on one particular department.
Yeah.
I had multiple departments that I was overseeing. And, there was so many different agency heads that was, of course, much older than me. But again, I hate to keep saying this, but I'm just going to say is that what you got to remember, that regardless, as I said earlier, the levels you continue to go up, still do the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. Treat people good.
Yep. Level of respect. People will work with you. And it was an amazing 2 years where I learned the whole strategy of helping put citywide budgets together.
Yeah, yep.
Dealing with constituents.
Yep.
Dealing with elected officials now, right? Because I'm really touching elected officials.
Yeah.
And also having the opportunity to grow professionally.
Yeah.
And you're talking about leadership roles, like, commanding that respect, because you are 35, 36, and these guys, some of these guys have been in the city for 20 plus years.
Some people been in there just as long as you've been alive, right?
But you got a chance to learn the different departments, like what was the roles of central services and what they did. A greater understanding of even parks and recreation, community development. What was their role and their purpose. So enjoy those 2+ years being in that role, and then by the time I finished that, like I said, I was more equipped to understand citywide budgets and helping put those together. If this was my next step, I continued on either with that administration, the next administration, or moved on somewhere else. But it gave me a whole different level of confidence.
Yeah, yeah.
You was confident, but now you was at a whole nother level where, hey, maybe this thing is big now.
Yeah, because you proved to yourself that you can do it. And, what most people, I would say, struggle with is making that jump. Like I'm good in recreation. I'm doing very good.
Yeah.
I have an opportunity to continue to climb the ladder, but I'm going to make a pivot, right, into something uncertain. My skill sets hasn't been fully developed in that area.
Right.
So I'm going to have to really, tighten up and really go. Most people will say, I'm going to go with what's comfortable. And I always tell folks in leadership, right, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah. And if you are that, you will continue to grow. So by doing that, you were able to learn policy. You were able to learn budgeting. You were able to learn recreation, transportation, central service, capital projects, all these things that are critical to run in a city. So now you gained that knowledge because you were comfortable with being uncomfortable. And then you transitioned to what?
Eventually, I became the assistant director of Rec and Parks.
There you go. How much you making now?
I think that between the senior administrative officer, I think that bump put me somewhere around 70, 75 at this point in time. So
all right, now listen to that.
Now.
I went from 24,000 to 75,000, right? So I tripled up. Is it tripled up?
Almost
your money?
Tripled up, yeah.
Right.
In
so
about
you
12 years.
In 12 years, tripled up. So you turned your passion into a living.
Yeah.
Right. And it started because of your passion. So when you do something you love, even though you may start out not making a lot of dollars, the opportunities because of your passion and because you're going to put everything into it, opportunities will come your way, right? And that's what happened. So now you're an assistant director. Tell us a little bit about what's next.
Well, and to this day, I have a great relationship. Dale Doherty was the director.
Yeah.
He transitioned to Macon from South Carolina, and one of the things we started talking about is like, I was at that crossroad, that path where you got to continue to refine your leadership.
Yeah.
And I remember one day we was talking, and we was talking about like leadership philosophies.
Yeah.
And he shared something that has stuck with me to this day. He said, 3 key components to a leadership philosophy.
Yeah.
And that was clarity of thought.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have a clear vision of what you're going to be leading, or
Absolutely.
what is your mission, what are you trying to lead in an organization. But beyond that clarity of thought, you have to have tenacity for action.
Yeah.
So you got to develop a plan, right?
Yeah.
So you got this vision.
Yeah.
Now you got to create this plan. But the last thing that he said to me, and like I said, it stuck with me to this day, was uncompromising values.
Yeah.
Regardless of what happens,
Yeah.
you have a set of values that was instilled into you at an early age.
Absolutely.
Honesty, accountability,
Yeah.
optimism, and to me, those values I believe in.
Yeah.
And so when I became the assistant director, Macon County Parks and Rec, I really leaned into. I wanted to start shaping my focus to reaching out and making sure I pull up the next person.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I start helping them. And, I had my group of mentees, young men who were starting their careers. And I poured into them all that I know.
Yeah.
You have those people that sometimes they hoard information, and that's never good.
Yeah.
I poured everything I had into them, from my role when I started as an athletic coordinator to eventually becoming a special operations manager, to going and spending a little over 2 years as a senior administrative officer, to now being an assistant director, because I wanted them to be the best that they could be.
Yeah.
And where does that go back to? My grandmother.
Yeah.
Remember? The conversation that she had with me and pouring into me and encouraging me to always be the best that I could be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And always excel and never settle.
Yeah.
And so as an assistant director, I was able to start effecting some real change in a department that I had, like I said, been a part of for almost 12 years.
Yeah.
A couple years away, being in the mayor's office. And this was the first time that I could really make some change, real change.
Yeah.
Policy-wise,
Yeah.
investment-wise in the agency, and making sure that we invest into our communities.
Absolutely.
And the goal that me and the director had, there was certain areas that who's focused on. Like I said, the parks piece, and going back to, when I developed the functional chart, and we was able to put acreage and those things, we was able to develop a strategy where we created these 2-man crews, and we divided all the parks up amongst, that was under our control, and we had it down to a science where our park maintenance team was maintaining every one of their parks. We had large parks, small parks, Monday through Friday. And it was almost like an internal competition. Yeah. But we even extended to focusing on our highways entrances and exits, right?
Yeah, it was critical.
Which was state,
Yeah.
but because we had some extra time, we would go out and we would cut those medians for exit on ramps and exit ramps, because they're your gateways into your community.
Absolutely. First thing people see.
First thing people see. And then beyond developing those strategies in parks, I was also able to focus on the recreation side of the house.
Yeah.
And looking at our current conditions of our facilities and start assessing our facilities and start developing strategies around capital investment in those facilities. And while assistant director in Georgia, they have something called a SPLOSH, which is Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax.
Yeah.
It's a penny tax, but it can be used only for capital bills, capital projects. And we was able to, in this first run, to get, I think it's like $12 million committed.
Wow.
And Georgia, and making Georgia $12 million in capital, that's like,
you're a billionaire.
Yeah, and so we was able to improve and purchase some new equipment for the staff, for our park maintenance team, but we also focused on really starting to develop the plan of renovating the rec centers.
Yeah.
Because similar to where I am now, there had not been any real investment since the 70s in those facilities. And the first one that we designed, and I kind of led that whole charge, and that's where I'm now getting this, like I said, this additional knowledge about overseeing capital projects, construction projects. Yeah. Understanding the role of your architects or your consultants. Yeah. Understanding the roles of your GCs. Yeah. Sitting in those owner, architect, and contractor meetings, going through this whole process. So we was able to renovate our first rec center, which is an amazing facility, and is one of the better facilities there now. Rose Jackson Community Center. So the experience as assistant director it really helped me strengthen my leadership. Yeah. Having those clear now that I really, to this day now, I believe in those and I live by clarity of thought, tenacity for action, and uncompromising values. Yeah. And I share that with our team. Yeah. But also it's when I start looking at reading more books about leadership.
Absolutely.
The John Maxwell's of the world, right? Yeah. And in my master's degree, I remember studying about the Peter Principle. Yeah. And Peter Drucker, who's the godfather of management, right?
Absolutely.
And understanding what the Peter Principle meant and being able to understand. And I start taking my meetings with my immediate leadership team. I start turning those almost, they used to call me Professor Moore because I wanted to start teaching them and understanding some of the principles of leadership. Yeah. Understanding when someone say you want to create a culture of excellence, what that really means. Yeah. And that was something that I started instilling in my team, is creating what we call a culture of excellence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And excelling at everything you do and pouring and investing into your team so that because we used to say, me and Doc used to say all the time, I'll take a good employee for 3 years that's going to advance and move on than an employee that's not performing that stays around for 10.
Yeah.
And so we have to pour in our staff and invest in our staff. Yeah. Because you don't want to say you have employees that's not performing and they're sitting there for 10 years.
Yeah.
But you can't tell them they're not performing if you're not investing into them. Yeah. If you're not pouring into them to give them opportunities to improve. Yeah. If you're not having that dialogue and communicating. And that's all part of leadership. Yeah. And this is now at this stage of my life, this is when I'm really learning the full understanding of what it means to be an effective leader in a leadership role. Yeah.
Pouring into your team, training your team, giving them opportunities. It's critical. You're only as good as your weakest link, right? People don't really understand that. You could be the greatest leader in the world, but if no one's willing to follow you in your organization, more than likely your organization will not move forward. So you have to invest in your team more than even now at that point in your career, investing in yourself.
Right.
So you did a great job, right? You did a lot of great programs. You became an assistant director. Tell me the next few steps that you had.
Well, the next step was Doc moved on. He moved on down. I think he went to a larger city.
Yep.
And I got the opportunity to become the director of the agency.
There you go.
And as the head of the agency, I remember my first day. You walk in the office and you look around, and it really sinks in.
Yeah.
As assistant director, there was always a director.
Yeah. Now everybody's looking at you.
Everybody's looking at you.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember a resident coming to me. We was at the Tubman Museum for an event, and this individual walked up to me, and he said something, and I was like, wow. And he said, "New levels, new devils."
Absolutely.
And I said, wow. But we're so excited to see you assume this role. But what's also important is I felt like it was so many people counting on me, because in this role, I was also the first Black director to sit in this seat.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that at that point in time, we used to have this thing called one making.
Yeah.
And I believe in that. Recreation has to be for all. Investment has to be for all.
Yeah.
There was, at some point in time, there was these myths that African Americans or people of color, you build rec centers for, but the white communities or others, they just focus on parks. That's not the case. You build a park system for all, and so when I came in, I got a lot of support from the mayor at that point in time. Yeah. I got a lot of support from the elected officials. Everybody was really excited to see me in this role, and so you walking out in the community, and so it was, for once, you felt like making Georgia was on your back. Right? Yeah. And this was that moment in time in your life where everything that your grandmother, your grandfather, every mentor that you had in your life, you think about the investment. Yeah. All the things that they poured into you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now it's showtime. And I was able to build an amazing organization there. When I go and visit from time to time, I have people tell me, thank you for all that you did. We was able to get a second special purpose local option sales tax. Yeah. Where we was able to get $48 million. Yeah. So we went from 12 in the first one to down to direct, and we did extremely well with the first 12. Yeah. That we was able to get $48 million. In that $48 million, we was able to build the first new rec center. Yeah. It was a South Bibb recreational facility. This was going to be an amazing facility. We was able to purchase some land, and we was able to put a rec center in the South Bibb community that did not have any recreational opportunities. Yeah. And the goal for this facility was to build an outdoor tennis facility, trails, athletic fields, but a 20,000 plus square foot recreation center. Yeah. But then also as part of this $48 million was to improve existing rec centers. And during my time, we was able to, while I was still there, we improved 3 of the rec centers. The new rec center was under construction. Yeah. Didn't get a chance to see it finished, but saw the steel come out of the ground, start seeing the building form before I ended up taking to my next step. But we invested in pools, we invested in playgrounds, because sometimes people don't really realize that recreation touches everyone. Yeah, absolutely. 0 to 100, right? Every community may not have a rec center, but majority of the communities have play spaces. Yeah. The majority of the communities have playgrounds. Yeah. And unless you was part of, and Macon was not one of those cities where there was a true preventative maintenance program in place, because the budget was the budget. Yeah, right. Yeah. So you wasn't able to invest as much as you want that you may see in some of the more affluent communities. But we made that a part of our focus. Yeah. And so in this role as director, it was that final piece for me that has put me in the seat that I am now, that has a clear vision, clear focus on what I'm doing in my current capacity.
Yeah, and that's huge, right? So you literally, like Drake said, started from the bottom, right? Meaning you started as a coordinator, moved. Now you're running this agency, and you're able to do, things see, what folks don't understand is when you build a rec center, right? When you build those assets, they stay around for generations, right? Of kids that are able to come in and play and get their mind off of things, grow, learn, socialize with other kids. It's transformational, if you will. to put a rec center in a park, in a playground, in trails, and it builds community, right? So you're able to do that everywhere you do because of that passion that you have. And again, we go back into doing what you love. Right? Doing what you love. And, those things are critical. I remember when I became public works director and I oversaw all capital for our city, I grew up playing in Rainbow Rec Center off of Seminary and International Boulevard. I remember going and playing basketball. I remember going and eating free lunch, right? I remember mom going to get that free cheese and butter, right, from the spot. And then when I became the director of public works at that time, I was able to rehab and redo that whole facility.
Right.
A facility that I grew up in. Never thought in a million years that I would be helping lead a facility that I played in, right? So you get an opportunity to do some excellent things for those communities, but then you said you transitioned. That's a hard transition. Top of the rec center, top of the park and rec, building these things. Now you're moving on to something else. Talk about that.
It clearly was the hardest decision I've ever had to make in my life.
Yeah.
I was leading an amazing organization at that time. Clearly had created what we called a culture of excellence.
Yeah.
If you, and this is another, again, from my readings, I read a book by Jim Collins called Good to Great.
Yeah. I got it right here over here in the bookshelf.
And in that book, it talks about, he really looked at Fortune 500 companies and how the great companies continue to be great companies.
Correct.
Compared to the companies that stay, okay, we're okay, so we're going to stay good.
Yeah.
But good companies never do well in turbulent situations.
Yeah.
Or when a lot of challenges hit their way. And so in that book, he talked about three key things. He spoke about a book, right? He spoke about a bus.
Yeah.
And he talked about three key things. You got to get the right people on the bus.
Yep.
You got to get the right people in the right seats. And you got to get the wrong people off. So when I took over as a director in Making Bib, I shared with my team about I want to create a culture of excellence.
Yeah.
And here are the things we need to do to create this culture of excellence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we would say this in many meetings, and everybody understood it, and they took on to that component, that important piece. But a lot of people sometimes would get stuck on you got to get the wrong people off.
Yeah.
And the instance think, oh, you finna come in, you about to fire everybody.
About clean house. No, yeah.
It's not that.
Yeah.
You have to get people trained and developed with the right mindset to perform their job duties and the job that they're doing.
Correct. Yeah.
It's not to just get people, to fire people, right?
Yeah.
And so they was doing amazing things.
Yeah.
But again, I go back to something, everything about me is gonna really come from my rearing as a child.
Yeah.
Remember one of the things I mentioned earlier was you gotta find your purpose.
Yeah.
And I had found my purpose, man. I was living my best life, right?
Yeah.
Changing kids' life, changing communities,
yeah.
meeting seniors, going to the senior center,
Absolutely.
Being with the seniors who are amazing, right? Them teaching you how to crochet and play biz whiz and all these other things, right? Growing up, going through college, you learn how to play spades, but not biz whiz. Right? I think you got to be a little age to do that, but at some point in time, I felt there was a bigger call and bigger purpose.
Yeah.
And so one night I was sitting at home and I saw this opportunity. Baltimore City Recreation and Parks was looking for a director.
Yeah.
And, I prayed about it.
Yeah.
I said, if this is a sign, if this is show me. And I remember making a decision and going on faith. Applied for the job. Went through the interview process. Eventually ended up coming to Baltimore, doing a tour. Mayor Pugh at that time interviewed me. Amazing woman.
Yeah.
And she believed that I was the answer for Baltimore City.
Yeah.
She gave me that shot. So now, I talked about that strong, amazing wife of mine, right?
Oh yeah.
So now you gotta go home and say, Hey, wife. Hey, 3 kids.
Yeah.
The city that you've known all your life, how you feel about relocating? And I remember us pulling out and we did the pros and cons chart.
Yep.
And we all said at the end, if it was more pros than cons, then maybe this is our next step. And of course, I'm sitting here in Baltimore City, so I guess we end up having more pros than cons.
Yeah.
But I'm thankful to have me and my wife was able to establish a really close-knit inner support group that we can have those conversations. And I remember our oldest child was going to be a freshman at the University of South Carolina.
Yep.
And so a 3-hour drive from home became an 8-hour drive for us. So now it really did become a real, I'm away from my parents, and my 2 younger kids came to a new city and they had to make their adjustments. But we came to Baltimore. And I remember on my tour of Baltimore, and I toured some of the various rec centers, I saw the glass half full, never half empty.
Yeah.
Because there was so many opportunities, so many things that you could do. And I had an opportunity, was selected, and we came.
Yeah.
July 1st, 2017.
Okay.
We were riding to Baltimore, Maryland. Didn't know where the grocery store.
Didn't know where the Giant was.
Didn't even know about a Giant at the time, right? And the rest is history.
Yeah.
And it's something about Baltimore that it grabs you.
Absolutely.
And, over these last 7 years, I've had amazing support from the elected officials, regardless who's sitting in the seat. Currently is being served, and Mayor Scott sitting in that seat. Every person that has sat in that mayor seat, from Mayor Pugh to Mayor Young to now Mayor Scott, have all been supportive of our vision and how we build and improve recreation in our community.
Yeah.
And they all talked about their different stories. Mayor Young, Mayor Scott especially, talked about their stories of the impact of rec center. I remember Mayor Young used to say all the time that if it wasn't for the rec department, he would have never been able to serve as city council president and eventually be serving as mayor. Mayor Scott talked all the time about his stories and growing up in Park Heights and visiting and playing basketball at Queensberry Park and playing on that playground at Queensberry Park, which is now getting ready to be replaced and improved.
Yeah.
So when I came into Baltimore, I was also told, which was a little shocking, that Baltimore had seen I would be the 19th executive director in 20 years.
So 19 in 20 years.
Yeah, let's think about that. Right?
Wow, that's almost one a year.
Yeah, in some cases. And so you come into a culture where the executive director seat has been a revolving door.
Yeah.
No continuity, no consistency, and there's no. I don't know why each person chose to do whatever they did. Right. So you're constantly being asked when I first walked in. So are you
gonna be
committed?
Yeah.
Are you committed to this? And I share with staff. I made sure I made my rounds. I met with all the different people when I first got here, all the different bureaus and everything. And I share with them all. I moved my wife and family here. Interrupted everything that my kids was doing where they were. We didn't come to Baltimore for a short stay. I came here to help make change. Yeah. And I have been able to and have been allowed to be able to make change, which I feel our agency is moving in the right direction. Yeah. We are an agency where we've seen with the support of administrations, over $120 million in capital investment.
Man, wow.
We're right now, we just, in my 7 years being here, when it's all said and done, just right now in these 7 years, we will have changed or impact or replaced 11 rec centers.
Wow, that is major.
Almost a quarter of our facilities.
Yeah.
But what's really amazing about this is we're getting ready to install in 1 year 26 playgrounds.
Wow.
And it goes back to there's not a rec center on every corner, but there's a lot of playgrounds.
Correct.
And a lot of these playgrounds we need to improve.
Yeah.
But not just rec centers, not just playgrounds. Another important piece that we're seeing, and our aquatics chief, Nikki Collins, is really refocusing her vision around aquatics is we see the stats. There's a large number of urban kids that don't know how to swim.
Yeah.
And so improving our learn to swim programs.
Yeah.
But in order to have learn to swim programs, you got to have facilities that are functioning and operational.
Yeah.
And so starting under Mayor Pugh at the time, I went to her about a financial commitment for improving our outdoor facilities, our outdoor pools. She committed. When Mayor Young took over, he signed on, and Mayor Scott has
doubled down on it.
Yeah, doubled down and committed to this, right? So, and we've completely redone 2 swimming pools.
Yeah.
And we have 4 that's either starting construction. I'm sorry, correct that. 5 that's either starting construction or they're in the final stages of design that's going to be going out for bidding soon. Yeah. So that we're talking about 7 of our aquatics facilities that we're improving. Yeah. But it doesn't stop, right? You know, and we got to continue to find ways that we improve our parks and our facilities. So I just think that, you know, being in this role that I am in now, I consider myself a seasoned leader. Yeah, absolutely. But in order to get to that point to be a seasoned leader, you had to go through, in 1999, when I was hired as an athletic coordinator. Yeah. Fresh out of college, right? Yeah. Making $24,000.
Now you tenfold your stuff.
You know, and so
you double down, right? And double down more.
But you know, I think the focus that you are, you know, and thank you for having me here, is I really want, before we end this interview, to really speak to anyone who listens to this, that's young, that's just getting ready to start their career. There are steps to everything. Yeah. And I remember I was in a management leadership class, and I remember his name, I can't think of his last name, but his first name was John. And we was talking, and I was eager. I'm like, man, you know, I want to advance. How do I advance? Right? Yeah. And one of the things he asked me was, so what is your strengths? And he's like, man, I'm taking management classes. I got my master's degree in public administration. He says, what is your knowledge financially? Because a lot of organizations want people that can understand the numbers, that can manage the numbers. Yeah. And I says, wow, yeah, I got some budget experience. I know how to put a budget together. But he was like, no, do you understand the numbers? Yeah. And he says, you may want to look for a program that can strengthen your knowledge. So I ended up going to the University of Georgia and getting going through their Certified Financial Officer program, which really dug into governmental accounting 1 and 2, budgeting, procurement, treasury management, to strengthen my tools. Yeah. So I say this to say to all our young listeners that is in that path that want to excel, is make sure that you order your steps right, that you understand. I didn't become a director of Baltimore City overnight. Yeah. I'm 26 years into my career. When I came to Baltimore, Maryland, I was 19 years, have been in this profession. Yeah. I didn't become an assistant director until 12 years into my career, right? But you have to understand that you can't go from college to being executive leader overnight.
Yeah, things you gotta learn.
Things you gotta learn, but you can get there, right? You know, and so our listeners to really understand that, you know, anything you commit your mind to it, you can excel. Yeah. Regardless of the situation, regardless of what is surrounding you, regardless of the environment that you may have grown up in. Yeah. You control your future. You control your path. Yeah. And no one else should be able to control that for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so, you know, I hope I can inspire someone to continue the mission that they're on and understand that you can get anywhere you want, but it takes time, it takes hard work, but it all starts with what you have in yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point earlier, you know, it takes a vision, right? It takes a plan. It takes a team, right? Whether that's personally, your family, whether that's professionally, your executive team. It takes a lot of folks in order to get there. And it sounds like you had a great team that supported you to do that. And I can tell you, listen, shout out to the folks at Cahill, right? That's where my daughter learned how to swim, right? when you talk about aquatics, right? When you talk about aquatics in Druid Park, they got aquatic park in there. My daughter was there the first week and sliding down the slides, right? And the point purpose of that is it's giving a lot of kids an opportunity to get over the fear of water, right? It's giving a lot of kids an opportunity to learn how to swim so that they can be safe around water. And that's critical. But it doesn't even stop there, right? Let's talk about some of the other programs you're doing, right? You're doing concerts in the park, right? 150,000, 200,000 people showing up. You're doing Christmas lights in the park. You're doing Boo and Halloween in the park. And you're bringing communities together, dog walks. You're bringing all different type of, let's talk about it though. Because people just think park and rec is rolling out balls, playing on the swings, and playing hoop in the court, right? That's not what it is. It's about, like you saying, bringing community. So let's talk about some of the non-traditional programs you're running, right? Let's talk about some of the concerts. So tell us a little bit about, what you're doing there and why that's important to the community.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, I tell people back in the day, maybe the philosophy was park and rec was like a physical ed teacher.
Yeah.
You keep a kid fit, provide some sport opportunities, through training and development in that. But recreation today is totally different. Mm-hmm. It's more than that, just athletics. And don't get me wrong, as I stated earlier, I grew up in my small town.
Yeah.
We had one recreation center in the entire city, right?
Yeah.
But I grew up in the athletic arena. But in today's time, our young people today, they want more.
Yeah.
Everybody's not an athlete.
Yeah.
So what we have continued to challenge our program department about is we need to meet our teens where they are,
yeah.
our youth where they are, our seniors where they are. And so you're correct. We have STEAM education at 8 of our centers. STEAM is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics.
Yeah.
Robotics. This past year, we had 5 teams represent Baltimore City Rec in parks for the first time at the Logo Championships.
Yeah.
Amazing opportunity for kids, right? Because now you're getting these kids to engage in something that naturally they may not have thought about.
Correct.
Not only am I building a robot, but I'm building a robot that can program to do different tasks.
Yeah.
And now I'm competing with other students to do those similar tasks and see how quick my robot can move something versus that team member of another team, right? Getting our kids to think differently on how that they can compete in other things. But as what's so important about the STEAM is that there's basic mathematic principles that's being taught in everything you do when it comes around STEAM education.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
From the angles to the percentages to the measurements.
Yeah.
Now we're enhancing kids, and some kids haven't been a big fan of mathematics, right?
Yeah.
Now we're engaging it in a way that's fun to them. Esports. Esports is one of the fastest growing sport opportunities there is.
Yeah. Kids getting paid to play games. Come on.
Kids being paid to play games. Something that me and you grew up and we played Nintendo and everything. We just thought it was for fun.
Yeah.
Now they're giving scholarships. They're part of competitive teams. We're getting ready to open up our first esports lab.
Yeah.
So excited about that.
Yeah.
But there's other opportunities that we're doing. We are, as an agency, we have small vendors that need to really showcase their abilities. So we have twice a year vendor fairs.
Yeah.
And we hire people here in this community to come in and help us in offering various after-school activities.
Yeah.
So one is strengthening our programming, but it's also helping build up our small business vendors as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's, you have all of those things because we're trying to meet everyone where they are. But we also understand everybody loves music.
Yeah.
And so in 2018, AFRAM, which is the African American Festival, was brought back. It was activated, and it was decided to move it to Druid Hill Park.
Yeah.
And so since 2018, every year we've seen this thing grow and grow and grow. This past year we had over 300,000 people that was in attendance.
Absolutely.
Largest crowd we had. And
tell them who was there. Who was there?
Ron Isley.
Come on now.
Was there, and he shut it down, man. The year before we had the OJs,
you got
Ella Mae's been there, it's
You
like
got Tamar there.
Tamar was there last year, so the list goes on and on.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But another thing that we in conjunction with the mayor's office, Mayor Scott and his team, is how do you bring some kind of festive type activity or event like this into downtown area?
Yeah.
Right? And so this, year one we had Charm Live, which was a 1-day music festival
in front of City
Hall. Right? Year two we moved it to.
And who was there? Who was there? Tell them.
And in year one we had. I can't think of who the fuck was that. Can't remember, man. Why you asking that? Oh man.
Yeah, Kelly Price. Who you had?
We had Kelly Price. We had Stokey from Mint Condition. We had John B.
Yeah.
We had.
He had a fire lineup. That's what it was.
I do remember. Those they was there. This past year we had her counts.
Oh, okay.
She counts on us. What's the girl out of DC? I don't know. I can't think.
All right, we're gonna edit that out.
We're gonna edit that out. But every year the event has grown, and so I think this year is gonna be even a bigger year when it comes there. But we've had events like Birds and Bacon and Bourbon.
Oh, that's the DC folks. Does that know? Who's that?
It was in Baltimore.
Oh, that's the Baltimore folks.
It's a Baltimore event.
Okay.
So you have people that love birds.
Okay.
You
hold on. We're gonna rewind that. Hold on, y'all, because I don't want to say DC. We in Baltimore. So start that over again. We had that. Say it again.
So we had also beyond just Charm City Live and AFRAM, Charm City Lights that we highlighted the first ever largest LED Christmas lighting display. We had other events because we want to make sure that we are offering activities for everybody. Yeah. So we had, for the first time ever, Birds, Bacon, and Bourbon, where the bird watchers, we have people, there's a lot of bird watchers in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different bird species in Baltimore.
And I didn't know that until I came. I got Orioles, I got Cardinals, I got everything in my yard.
Yeah, you got crows, you got everything, right?
I got hawks.
And I remember being in one of the bird watching groups and learned so much about birds from they know their sounds, they know what the bird calls are. And then we had, you gotta feed people. And then we had an amazing curator to talk about the different bourbons. So
I gotta go to that one next year.
You gotta go. We're gonna have another one this year. Right. And then we're gonna bring in another activity called Fetch and Petra, which is like a garden day party that we're bringing in 24. So I just encourage, our staff that we continue to find ways that we're providing these social opportunities for everybody. Yeah. That we're connecting our youth in ways that they've never been done before. Yeah. We're expanding on, there's a huge concern about teens. Yeah. We're getting ready to bring in a teen coordinator to focus on teen programming. Yeah. But we have 5 teen centers throughout the city that we're focused on now, how we engage them, making those spaces their spaces, so that they feel like they're part of it. Yeah. Youth advisory groups, adult advisory groups, like we want to continue to build our systems, our programs around the needs for the residents of Baltimore. No,
you're changing the landscape of Baltimore City and how people look and even engage with Park and Rec. And that's whether it's new facilities, whether it's new programming, whether it's engaging youth, seniors, adults. You're engaging at all levels. So, it's amazing what just a passion and a dream will end up on, right? But, your journey hasn't stopped there, right? So you're still on your learning journey. So, after all this is done, right, he has a wonderful career, beautiful wife, 3 beautiful kids, they all doing good things. You're now on your doctoral journey, right? And it was interesting, you talked about it a little earlier. You were brought up that you're going to be the first doctor in the family. And you probably thought medical doctor, right? But you were a dissertation away, a few chapters, a few pages away from having your doctor of education, am I right? PhD. This brother having a PhD. So, is it in your mind, listen, I'm I'm still doing it for grandma? I mean, what are you thinking?
Yes. When I get to that final stage and I get to put my dedication in, it will be dedicated to her. You know, it's because while she's no longer here to see it, I know she will see it. But also, it's that final chapter for me. You could never stop learning, but there's still so much out there. And getting this PhD in sports management is going to open doors from so many other things. From writing books to educating our communities, urban communities, of how we help to cure or reduce the amount of youth violence that's happening.
Yeah.
Not just in Baltimore, but all over this country. My dissertation focuses on strategies to reduce or eliminate youth violence in Baltimore City. And as part of that research, it's going to be me meeting with some of the people that's on the streets every day that's doing this work. There's organizations out there every day that are connecting with these young people, such as We Are Us, such as Baltimore Brothers, such as Uncle T, such as Rich, that's in the Cherry Hill community. So many organizations. And then you have individuals like Aaron Mabey that's committed to this work every day. And so having and understanding the work that they're doing, being able to document some of that as part of my research, but also talking to elected officials.
Yeah.
Because, you know, policies play a factor too.
Absolutely.
You know, one of the things I can say about our agency and when we was asked to be a part of this trauma-informed care and being a trauma-informed agency, it's like, sign us up.
Yeah.
Because our staff experience trauma from youth every day. But how helpful can they be if maybe some of our staff experienced some of that same trauma when they was a child that never got addressed? So being trauma-informed will play an extremely important role in our work as an agency. So that is why I decided to focus my topic around this, because it's my passion, it's my desire. I want to see every young child have an opportunity.
Yeah.
And some of our kids dying at such a young age.
Absolutely.
And so I'm hoping that this research, when I'm finished, some things that I can continue to implement in our after school time program is additional research that I would like to be able to do, partner with some of the great work that they're doing at Johns Hopkins and other places to understand what's happening. But the challenges that we're seeing in Baltimore is just not in Baltimore.
It's everywhere.
You know, my neighbor in the city, I speak to my colleagues in D.C., they've experienced some of the same things. Philly.
I'm from Oakland.
You know, Oakland, Atlanta. We're all dealing with some of the same things, but how do we work together to solve things? And there's things that my good friends over in Detroit may be doing that I can share and put here in Baltimore from a Rec and Park standpoint. Maybe there's things that they're doing that we're doing here that we can share with Detroit and others. So beyond just, you know, the drive and dedication for my grandmother is also just being here for 7 years and seeing the real impact of what's happening to our young people has had me to think differently and do some additional research and finish this dissertation in short order so that I can continue to do the great work similar to what you're doing from a leadership standpoint.
No, I mean, see, when people look at violence in the city, it was me. I'm thinking it's all directly related to policing. Violence and policing. More of policing, less violence, less policing, more violence. But that's not the case, right? And I know when I was in Baltimore City, Mayor Scott put together a plan, and part of it was around engaging in community, right? Engaging with young folks. And that wasn't so much for police. Park and Rec has just as much impact on crime as police, because you have the ability to get in young folk off the street and get them into midnight basketball programs that you guys got running, getting them into swimming, getting them into youth jobs. I mean, you all give so many jobs every year, and you see the results of that. Baltimore, murders in Baltimore went down, 60, 70, 120%, some huge number. Right. And it's not just because the policing is from the work that you are doing. So when you're looking at, getting your doctorate degree, when you're looking at, the work that you're looking at doing in the future, you see the results now. And so kudos to you for just being a part, being active, being engaged in that work, because it's critical. And I hope that you continue to share that, because, any city, no matter you're urban, rural, suburban, you can learn, how park and rec can change a community in so many ways. So kudos to you. I want to give a shout out, to everybody that's, making it happen for you. You got a, wonderful family that's pushing and supporting you, and I know you're doing the same thing. So shout out. I also, when you become doctor, don't forget about Two Doc Minds. Come on, special guest. Always want you on to drop that knowledge so that our audience can learn from people that's been there, that's done it, but more important, giants that are willing to share, right? So I'm going to call you. I'm going to be the first one to call you. I'm going to call you pre-Dr. Moore. And when you get that dissertation done and finish it, be the one that congratulated you on being Dr. Moore, because that's a huge, huge accomplishment. So congratulations.
Thank you. And I want to thank Doc Mines and you, Dr. Mitchell, for inviting me to be on your platform. I think it's important that we continue to share our different strategies, but our different challenges and how we're getting to the places that we're getting to, and continue to figure out ways that we not only help our young people, we can definitely keep our seniors active, but we got to put a lot of emphasis right now on our young people and investing in them. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So if you thought it was hard for you, right, coming from a small city, mom's passed away at 13, transitioned into many different professions in life, but kept plugging away at it, never giving up, always persevering. I guarantee you, if you're seeing this and you do that, the sky's the limit. So keep pushing forward, keep watching, drop a like, hit a comment, but definitely hit that notification bell so you can get this content when it first drops. And keep on watching. I'm Dr. J with Two Doc Minds. See you later.